This evening, we'll be updating, as I mentioned, the process and the procedures of where we are so far in terms of our reconfiguration. Tonight's presentation will cover the why. Once again, we'll revisit that because obviously there's different people here this evening with us. What it is, the why it needs, or why we should be going down this path. We will show you the many models that we grappled with. We will talk about a model that we believe can deliver to this board, to this community, and to our district, a model that I think will be beneficial for our students and for our community. If we can advance the slide, just bear with them there. One more back. There you go. Okay, what is reconfiguration? Again, we did this in February. I'll try to be brief on here, but I certainly want to make sure the folks that are with us tonight and did not have access or an opportunity to view or to be with us in February are caught up to speed. So, as I mentioned last month, 18 months approximately, this board, this administration, and this community grappled with redistricting or rebalancing. The board put together a charge, put it in the facilities committee, and worked, like I said, for approximately 18 months. In December, this past December, a second proposal was put to vote, and that vote was it did not receive passage at the board level. Some of the reasons for that were very specific in terms of the sustainability of such redistricting and boundary movement. Again, redistricting and rebalancing speak to moving attendance boundaries. So if you have an address of 123 Maple Street and that had you at school A, if the boundary lines were moved to address enrollments within schools, 123 Maple School now may attend school B. Very challenging. Dividing of communities was a big issue that we grappled with. But I think the most resounding concern that we heard was the sustainability. Is this redistricting or rebalancing that's being proposed sustainable? Will it last beyond 2 years and 3 years? Yes, we have declining enrollment, but if enrollment, it should spike because nothing is absolute. It doesn't go forever. We're not going to 0 students. Will we be able to absorb students into those different areas that we talked about? So it was extremely challenging to answer those questions specifically because of the unknowns, and we certainly were aware of new development. New development in this community is continuing, and it's quite pleasing to see construction has started to bud. So we're excited that we may have new families moving in. So the difference, reconfiguration. So reconfiguration is different than rebalancing, redistricting in this way. It takes a look at how schools are configured, meaning we are currently a K-5, pre-K-5 in some buildings, but pre-K-5 or K-5, and then a middle school of 6-8. And then we send the kids to the regional high school district. Throughout the state, over 600 districts are in our state. There are roughly over 400 different configurations. And we talked about this last time. The greatest factor in school success is culture and the resources that are available to you. But culture is certainly the #1 factor for student achievement and assuming all things are equal, meaning access to curriculum and access to resources, which is not an issue in this district. So the reconfiguration talks about the banding of grades by building. That's what we're talking about. In this district, we were historically a K-8 model for many, many years. Our students entered their local schools and they stayed in there from kindergarten right through 8th grade and then went off to regional. In 1994, 95, well, let me back up. At some point prior to 94, 95, certain schools outgrew themselves and then started sending 7th and 8th graders to schools like Land of Pines. So there were certain schools that absorbed the older children. So they had K-8. Some schools went K-6 and sent kids in the middle years off to Land of Pines, I know is one of the buildings. And Gribbling was another, Mr. Senator. And Gribbling School, they absorbed the older children and had a kind of focus there. In 94, 95, this town grappled with reconfiguration, leading to 94, 95, grappled and struggled and had rooms filled like this and beyond, is my understanding, about opening up a middle school. And versus maintaining the K-8 building or the K-6, 7, 8 model that existed in certain buildings. People fought for what they considered the norm at that time. In 94, 95, this opened, the passage happened prior to that. This building opened soon after that. A second passage came where Middle School South was then added. Let me correct myself. So the 94, 95, middle school opens. So the buildings become K-6, 7th and 8th grade in the middle school. 99 comes, Middle School South opens, and we now can absorb 6th grade into the 2 middle schools. So now we go to K-5, and we have middle schools, 2 buildings, 6, 8. The boom happens, construction flies, people move, and we build a couple of buildings, Greenville, Adelphia, and then Memorial, the 3rd middle school, in 2004. They opened up in 2003, the elementaries. 2004, the middle school Memorial opens, and we're now talking about a K-5, 6, 8 model throughout the community. We all know in 2009, Southern School, 2009, 2010, I believe it was 2009, Southern School is closed due to declining enrollments, kind of merges with Aldridge, creating what we have today, a very populated building in the Aldridge community, and some of the things we grapple with are a result of that. So while you sit before us this evening saying, don't change the norm, I think that historical look back is relevant to the history here in Howell and to show that we have successfully transitioned numerous times in the future. So grade banding and reconfiguration is the process of where you decide how many grades you want at specific levels. I told you approximately over 400 configurations exist. Farmingdale, our neighbors, our good neighbors right here, they're a K-8 building. They're a 1-building school district. We have neighboring districts where they have 6th grade buildings only. So they have K-5 and then a 6th grade building. Every 6th grader goes into that building. Then they go to a 7-8 building. We have K2, 3-5, 6-8 models. We have K6, 7-8 models. So there's lots of different variations. What we know is most districts find the configuration that works best for them, and they apply that, they implement those bandings of grades for various reasons. You can trust that this board and this administration is determining grade bandings with one major consideration: student achievement and putting kids in a position to be successful and putting staff in a position to deliver the best possible instruction. If we go to the next slide, or circle, I'm not sure what Prezi calls these slides. So why? Okay, we talked about what it was, but why do we need to do it? Well, as we heard for 18 months, we're okay with change if it's for improvement, it's equitable and fair to our community members, and that was very loud. And you don't have us sitting in these bleachers for that same reason in the near future. So that sustainability was a very loud concern. and one that resonated with me because I needed to be able to look this community, which I care greatly for, and tell you not only do I think it's in the best interest, because I'll stay here past midnight to debate how crowded schools aren't healthy for student achievement and for kids' culture. And I'll also stand here to midnight and tell you how undercrowded or underutilized buildings are equally troubling. But I can't put a Band-Aid on something, ask you to take that Band-Aid and think everything's okay, and then ask you again in 2 or 3 years to come sit with me and partner with me with more change. So the difference in what we're talking about now versus what we spoke about for the previous 18 months is this is a solution that is long-term sustainability. We will build into this model areas for growth in case, and hopefully soon, when the economy turns and residents continue to move into Howell and we receive an increase in students. So by doing a grade banding that we'll talk about in a little bit, we are certainly building in something that can be sustained and can last beyond just a few years. But while that's important, what's equally or even more important is the success we believe it will bring to our students. We know that when we marshal our resources and we put, for example, a K2 model where primary grades are grouped, and we have staff who are trained in early literacy and know instruction at primary grades and the developmental steps that a young learner goes through, an emergent reader versus a struggling reader, older. We know that there are different needs for those types of kids. So when we band, we can put our resources together and best meet those challenges for our children. And that is really hard to dispute. For example, I know in a handful of our buildings, very recently, we had, and I think I said this last month, one kindergarten teacher in the building. So we had a K-5 building with one kindergarten teacher in it. She had no professional community. She had no one to share and develop lessons with on a daily basis. She had no one to bounce ideas off or to say, I have a youngster experiencing this when we're talking about this type of unit or this type of instruction. Do you have a kid like that? And what did you do to help that child? Now, certainly email allows those individuals to write emails. Got to be careful about confidentiality. Hillary Clinton's learning that. Certainly, there's a phone. Most of them aren't on the wall any longer. And you can call your colleagues from across the district. But there is value in having a partner teacher across the hall, having 2 and 3 teachers across the hall who you can meet with on a common prep period and say, guys, how are we going to approach this? Or say, hey, I'm really doing well with this type of instruction, but I noticed over years my kids have struggled with this type of instruction. How about we mix kids once in a while, and I'll help your kids with this, or you can watch me teach this type of lesson. I can watch you teach this. It breaks down the isolation of small groups of professionals who are tackling important needs for youngsters. So the 2 resounding whys are quality of instruction for children and professional environments for staff, as well as the sustainability issue. I need to look this community in the eyes and say, hey, this is drastic. This is radical. This is change. But I'm telling you that we could sustain this and put our kids in an environment of success that we can last for a long time. So that's the what and the why. I believe I'm going to invite Mr. Preston up to just do a quick recap on some of the benefits to general education, and then he'll be followed by Mrs. Callender and Mr. Sanisak, and then we'll get back into this.
Absolutely. Thank you. So, just I told like hit many of these points, and we are slides that we drew that. I'm going to switch microphone. Much better.
So I'm going to recap some of the things that Mr. Isola said, but I'm not going to go long or go bullet for bullet on the things that are on this slide. Much of that Mr. Isola just covered with prime examples, and these slides are really pulled from the presentation that we did at the last board meeting and are currently up on the website. But just to highlight a few more of the specific reasons why, when we grade band, when we provide, we can narrow the focus down to the developmental needs of students at that particular grade band, rather than diversifying the supports, the professional development, the collaboration, and the things that we do to support the teachers in that environment. We diversify that over, K through 5. Grade banding would allow us to specify that and really meet those needs. The professional development, the collaboration becomes targeted on the developmental needs of the students at that particular age group. Guidance programs, so we can talk about academics, but let's talk about the whole child. So the life of the child, the social, emotional well-being of the child. It is very different, the needs of a child at, say, as Mr. Isola provided, a K2 versus, say, a child that's up in the 4th and 5th grades. Those needs are very different. Grade banding allows that building to focus on not just the academic needs, but also the social emotional needs of the child in that grade band, the children in that grade band. We can create developmental, more specified schedules for students. And each of the transitions that we would structure, we have the opportunity to make those planned, strategic transitions from one building to a next, in which we can support the children in their movement from one building to the next. Again, doing so strategically and doing so at their level that is most appropriate for their individual needs, the specific needs of each child. Again, not to go long on the gen ed needs or the gen ed benefits of rebanding, we've hit them, we've heard them, but just to recap a quick reason why. Without these, we don't move forward. So what I'd like to do now is turn the microphone over to my colleague, Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, Ms. Callender.
Thank you. We did discuss the ramifications for special education with changing to more of a grade band structure, and many of them are similar to the benefits that you gain in general education in terms of, children in grade-focused cohorts, more teachers at the grade level, et cetera. But we also have the opportunity for better utilization of special education staff in classrooms. When our programs, especially in the resource rooms, are spread out in different buildings, we oftentimes could have a teacher going into service, maybe 1 or 2 children in a grade level, where if we did band grades together and we had more 2nd graders or more 3rd graders or 4th graders, et cetera, in one building, we could maximize the opportunity for the staff to service those students and use our staff in more effective and efficient ratios, which would also allow us to schedule other things that would benefit students. So we absolutely could maximize our staffing when we can better utilize the staff that goes into classrooms. The same thing again, looking at groupings where we can group a little bit different based on the individual needs so that we can have more time spent with students who may need certain things versus other things in a pull-out program, because we'd have more students to work with. So the focus there could be different, and it would be a great benefit to the students as well as the teachers for planning. We talked often with our staff, because special education teachers often go into multiple grade levels. They have to have an expertise in the standards now for every single grade level, which is a huge charge for them. So if they are focused more on the grade levels in their buildings, they gain a greater expertise of the standards and the things they need to work with for our students at that grade level and can deliver it more effectively. So in terms of using their time in a more focused manner, that would be a great benefit to the staff and also the students who are receiving that instruction. With our preschool program, that kind of is a standalone program, so we can place that program in any building. We would love to see it in one building if we could do that. Again, because the staff could all be there together, working together, our supports could be there. There's a lot that we can do in that way, so we're kind of flexible with the placement of that program, which is also a plus. And then we have various things there about the preschool program that could be helpful as well. So we do maximize in terms of the grade banding. We maximize our staffing and our services to students. So we do feel that it could be very exciting for us as a department for the benefit of our kids.
And now to provide some insight into facilities and operations, Assistant Superintendent, Board Secretary, Mr. Sanisak.
Thank you. The exact configuration is not as big of an impact on the operations, but having the grade banding and concentrations in different, having the concentrations in larger numbers in individual buildings allows us some efficiencies that come from sharing assets, having assets less spread out, being able to have less surplus in each building, being able to maintain a better inventory and control of some of those grade-specific assets. And it's a sustainability of the buildings. To have some buildings more and less full puts different wear and tear on the buildings, and the balance capacity between the buildings offers some efficiencies in staffing and in utilization. Some other things that we're considering, we're looking at some different transportation and routing situations that should also provide, if not a large benefit, at least an efficiency in both equipment and cost. Thank you.
So I come back to you now. I have a little bit of a challenge ahead of me here. In the interest of being thorough, but without being incredibly redundant, we wanted to take you through some of the different grade banding models that we were looking at, that as a process, the committee and the administrative team started to look through. What was that process like? What types of models got rejected and for what reason? But without spending an absurd amount of time on each model. Mr. Isola said earlier in his introduction, different models that we grappled with. We did. We grappled with them deeply, each of them, throwing them out when they didn't meet the criteria or some of the information that we discussed earlier in the benefits. We tossed them out. If we're looking for sort of guiding principles that we asked ourselves and we asked the committee in the room, does the model make good educational sense? That first above all. Does the model improve upon the current educational environment that we have? We do great work. Can we improve upon that? Does the model provide long-range sustainability? That has been a huge consideration, as Mr. Isola said. That was a large factor, a resounding set of comments heard by us through the rebalancing process was how sustainable is this? So we asked those. Those became the litmus test for whether or not a proposal makes it to the next level. Through this process, through each one of these, we took the best of what was left, discarded what didn't work, and created new models. You'll see many of these are iterations of a similar model. They build upon themselves. So let me move through them. First, as a model, just sort of looking at a sort of north-south type of region, and then a configuration where it would be pre-K 1 through 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, 8. 2 buildings in the primary. We would have then 4 buildings in the lower elementary, 4 in the upper elementary, a 7, 8 in the 2 middle schools. This leaves us with 12 buildings, repurposing 1. The problem in this, again, as the committee started to work, 3rd grade curriculum is most aligned with a 5th grade or a 4th grade curriculum, as opposed to, say, a 1st grade curriculum. So putting 3rd graders in with the younger grades as a building focus didn't make the most developmentally appropriate sense to the committee. With that, in terms of also our pre-KK, we also would split populations of students as they move into new buildings. This also would create 2 additional transitions on top of what we already have. And one of those we believe might be an unnecessary transition. So I spent a little bit longer on that slide. I'll start to be able to pick up pace after this slide. This is another model that, while it looks quite familiar and therefore at first glance becomes very comfortable, this model has, again, very potentially limited sustainability. And I need to backtrack for a moment. The numbers you're seeing in here are not numbers for a building. They are global numbers based on next year's enrollment, and then we took those numbers and divided them equally among buildings. So it's not an accurate representation of any particular building, but rather what would it look like if we made approximations. Creates, though, with those approximations, a limited amount of sustainability, and it leads to the rebalancing issues that we still had. This would require moving neighborhoods, putting new addresses in different schools, and then creating a potentially very disruptive process within neighborhoods. Moving on, now we look at sort of two similar models where there's a pre-K environment in 6 different schools, or a K environment, so a primary school setting for 6 different schools, an elementary model, 3 through 6 in 4 different schools, and then 2 middle schools on the left at 7-8, or 2 middle schools on the right at 6-8. Again, some of the issues here, there's limited sustainability across. When we look at the numbers per building, again, just an equal allocation of the numbers of students. This does not create, neither one of these creates the long-term sustainability that we'd be looking for. 3rd through 6th grade in this model also was an issue. 3rd and 6th graders, again, doesn't allow us to maximize the supports at a developmentally appropriate level. Similar models, again, like I said, they start to iterate on each other. At first glance, they're going to look similar. You are going to be able to view these at home and stop the camera and take a look at them for longer. So I'm not trying to move us through overly quickly, but you'll have the opportunity to look at them more closely. In this model, again, experimenting with where we put pre-K in 6 buildings, or moving pre-K out to be housed in a single building and then leaving K in 6 buildings by itself. But also having a 3rd grade in that primary level versus having pre-K through 2 in that primary level. Again, limited sustainability, high numbers in some areas, low numbers in other areas, creates challenges as we move forward into the future. And again, that 3rd grade becomes sort of a flex point. We really want to be sensitive to that 3rd grade. It's a model where we have 4, so again, we'll look over here. We have 4 primary schools, 4 lower elementary schools, 2 upper elementary schools, and 2 middle schools. The challenge in each of these, again, limited sustainability here, and also one additional transition from what we currently have that may not be necessary. Again, happens in both of these models. There is also the potential for splitting populations of students from 2 buildings into 1 building. That can be problematic as well. So again, limited sustainability. So where do we get to? Each one of those iterations, and those are roughly, I think, 7 different models that we wrestled with out of many other different models to get to that point. What point to get to actually get to, if it was going to come up on me, there we go. To get to the model that we think makes the most educational sense, that is educationally beneficial. It makes good educational sense. It can provide a better sense of supports, and it does have long-term or long-range sustainability. So in this model, what we're proposing is a 5-5-2 model. We've sort of come to refer to it as. Looking at 5 primary schools, grades K through 2. 5 elementary schools, grades 3 through 5. And 2 middle schools, grades 6, 7, and 8. The numbers balance out quite well in terms of an equal allocation of numbers across the board. So it looks to have great sustainability. We start to hit over here what we have, and I know it's going to be hard to read from the audience, but these are a reiteration of the points that myself and my colleagues made earlier. It provides that long-term sustainability of our educational communities. It allows for an increase on focus and support by age-appropriate and developmentally appropriate levels. It increases the ability to provide intervention and acceleration opportunities for students. Focuses the educational and related services on, again, specific age groups and age-appropriate needs. That includes nurses, guidance, CST needs. Just going to jump down a little bit. It allows us to not break apart neighborhoods and sustain peer relationships. Students move as a cohort of grades together. So they all stay together. We don't disrupt the relationships, the friendships that have been long lasting. It minimizes, therefore, the disruptions in the neighborhood, and therefore it would improve the overall educational environment through the focused attention to the developmental needs of the students in each of those grade bands. So this is the model where we've come. The evolution of this process, the evolution of each model through this process has landed us at this model, our 552 model. So with that, I'm going to turn the microphone back over to our superintendent. We'll talk about our community and school needs, which is effectively next steps.
Thank you, Mr. Preston. So the model that you saw there in the last slide, the full screen slide, is the model of focus for us. It's where we're really honing our efforts and trying to figure out if, in fact, while we see statistically it's sustainable, we see that it grade bands appropriately, it gives us an opportunity to create that environment we've been speaking about throughout the evening. Well, if in fact we're going to move forward, there are community and school needs that must be addressed so that we have a level of confidence when adopting such a model that we can deliver what we've been talking about to the community and to our school and our school communities, but I also mean the community at large. Building specific needs. I'm not going to certainly read all those bullets, but we obviously recognize that there is going to be busing situations. There's going to be start time concerns. One of the things we're already started grappling with, I want everyone to please pay attention because you're doing great and you've been an awesome audience, but I'm going to say something and it is not a deliverable at this point, but it will demonstrate the level of concern we have been exercising as we look at these plans. Start times, I know when the president opens the floor, we are going to hear about start times. I heard it about redistricting and rebalancing, and I fully anticipate that we will hear about it tonight. When we talk about the primary and elementary school pairings, so there'll be like a sister school model, if I can use that term. One of the things we are exploring would be a start time that keeps them together. So for example, we take a bus route through a community and pick up all the K through 5 students. The bus stops at school A, drops off the age-appropriate bands for there, goes around the circle or down the block, and drops off the rest of the students. So now parents send their kids out to the bus stop once. There's complexities in that statement. So I'm going to say it again. If that doesn't happen, don't call me a liar. But what I'm saying to you, and this is Isola being frank, even though my name's Joe, what I'm saying to you is this. We're trying to make this as stress-free and pain-free as possible, but we will not compromise on what we're trying to accomplish for our district. Bless you. But it's that level of detail. That's an example of how we're taking all of these bullet points and drilling down for solutions, because we recognize these concerns. When you look at program implications, we know we have a gifted and talented program, the cluster groups and the 4th grade, 5th grade program, and then the middle school. We know those are standalone programs and magnet programs at the 4th and 5th grade. We know we got to find the right placement for that. Our ESL programs for our ELL students. Mrs. Callender articulated very clearly about the special education populations and the importance of keeping those students in a common sending pattern. Currently, for example, if you are in Adelphia School for a specialized program, you move up to Memorial School. If you're at Land of Pines, you move into North. You follow your like peers. Those things are important and would be continued to be important. We look at the next section here where we have vertical articulation, student leadership, guidance and child study team services. Those are all critically important things, but we believe they're solutions, not problems. And we are working on delivering a implementation plan that addresses those. Up top, how can I possibly not talk about co-curricular and athletics? If you paid attention in this town most recently, we delivered a Final Four with the good help from the Howell Basketball Club, who has done great things for our school district over the years. Got hairy. But this superintendent and his team and this board believe in providing enriching activities for kids. Those possibilities don't go away with grade banding. See, I believe in them. I know when a child is involved in his and her school, that involvement leads to a commitment, and when you're committed, your academic achievement goes up. So we're not pulling the shade down on everything that we have done well throughout the years. In fact, we're raising that shade and letting even more light in to deliver even better service for our students and for our community. The moving of assets. Mr. Sanisak will take care of that. I'll trust he'll do it. He'll get all the third grade books to the right buildings and all the sixth grade books to the right buildings. But that will take coordination. We're thinking about it already. The biggest issue that will be time sensitive is that letter E there, where we're talking about staffing. We're going to have to go through a very, very diligent and respectful process with our fine professionals throughout this school district. So putting teachers, putting paraprofessionals, putting administrators in the right environment for the greatest success. That will be challenging. That will be challenging. When I look at our administrators, some folks have been the principal of that school for every day that they've been a principal. Some vice principals. My dear friend and colleague Lenny Capari opened this building in 1994. He still works here. This building is important to him. To have to tell him he may be reassigned is a delicate and sensitive situation. But I know the professionals, I work closely with them, and I know they want what's best for children and for their careers as well. So that's a big one, but again, knowing who we are, I'm confident we will do it well. The last one isn't really a school board issue, so you'll allow me to indulge a second, because I know many of you have been on PTAs and PTOs and you have great respect for the work they do, as does the senior administration. We will work with our partner PTA, PTOs to find solutions for a new model if in fact we adopt and implement. Because we know that the efforts that parents, both moms and dads, have invested, the time they've invested is important to them. The enriching activities that PTA, PTOs deliver is critically important. But it does not trump what's right for kids. And I know that the parents will partner with us to figure out solutions where PTAs and PTOs can be viable organizations that help children. So I think our next slide, Mr. Preston, is the timeline. Yep. So tonight we'll speak about what I'll be requesting from the board in just a moment. And that will be, I will ask the board for authorization to continue direction to now drill down on that long list that you saw there of those needs, and to come back with a full implementation plan of that model you saw for board consideration at our April meeting, if not on the 15th, perhaps a special meeting soon after that. We'll talk about timeline with that as we get closer and the work starts to hone in. And then the work starts. You know, in May, we start the movement of ideas and concepts, and we test all that out. By June, I met with many members of the teaching staff in 2 different venues. I would love to be able to look our staff in the face and say, hey, your assignment is this grade, this building, by the time they go home in June. I've been very clear, I can't promise that, but every effort must and will be made to ensure that. summer, Mr. Sanitak gets busy getting the buildings ready. We get busy getting schedules and programs developed. And in September, there will be school. There will be school in September. So with that, Mr. President, that concludes our presentation of our update to both the board and the public. We will be, between now and the April meeting, we are planning a scheduled public presentation of an update, an additional update. Obviously, we'll make sure that the board is fully aware of that. We'll be doing other outreach. We've had the opportunity to have small groups of parents up to the office already. We'll continue to partner with this community to ensure proper notification and information is being dispensed to our community. So again, at this point, I'll ask if the board has any questions for senior administration. And on the conclusion of that time, I would ask that the board gives direction to administration to move forward with the dotting of the i's, the crossing of the t's to be considered for April.